Need a motion to go back in general session?
No, you just did that.
Just did that. So we're doing that. We live? Good.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, we are now back in general session, and we have two resolutions we'd like to consider.
We need a motion to set aside the rules to consider those two.
I'll make the motion.
The motion from Brian, do we have a second? Yeah, we got Sue, we got Cassie, we got Darrell, we got Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Henke, and Supervisor Ferguson. Okay, any discussion on setting aside the rules? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 20 by Supervisors Clary Hall, title to approve agreement with Cambridge Valley Rescue Squad, Inc. for point of dispensing support services.
Chairman, I'd like to move resolution number 20, please.
Moved by Supervisor Clary, do we have a second?
Second.
Supervisor Campbell, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Henke, and I believe Supervisor Ferguson. Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 21 by Supervisors Clary and Hall, title to appoint interim public health director.
Chairman, I'd like to move resolution number 21.
Moved by Supervisor Clary, Supervisor Sanketz, or Supervisor Henke, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Hicks, Supervisor Campbell, Supervisor Ward, Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Rozelle, Supervisor Griffith, Supervisor Ferguson. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's a roll call, okay.
Mr. Henke.
Yes.
Mrs. Fedler.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Lotoff.
Yes.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Ward.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Shelley.
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Clary.
Yes.
Mr. Griffith.
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted, 4,260 yes.
Okay. Now, at this time, I believe Supervisor Hicks, you want to go back into...
Well, may I make a suggestion, and I'll run this by you and Debbie, is perhaps we should finish up the supervisor's comments and then go into our executive session so we can adjourn out of the executive session.
Okay, unless we had something on the executive session we wanted to come back in, and we can come back in, correct, Roger? If we decided at the executive session we didn't want to come back into general, can we do that?
You could, you think you might do that, I wouldn't say you're gonna adjourn.
I just don't want to close the door in case, that's all.
Right, but we have the option of adjourning out.
You do.
We would have it if we don't do supervisor's comments now.
Right.
That was my point.
Okay. Very good, let's do the supervisor's comments then. Any supervisor comments? Yes, Brian?
I'd like to really thank, Tammy DeLorme and her people over at, Social Services to be so willing to go to work and help public health out in this crisis. That's greatly appreciated. The way our department has worked together is always greatly appreciated with this, a different scenario that we're usually in, and they really stepped up, and, I just want everybody to know that and how much I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you, Brian. Any other supervisor comments? Supervisor Henke?
I apologize, everybody. I have been not on my supervisor's comment diatribes for about 6 months. Some of you may not have even seen one of them. However, this morning, and I realize it's getting late, but this morning I think I have to spend a little bit of time on another one. I don't know about the rest of you, but after some things in the local papers, I have been getting a lot of calls, including one at 6:45 this morning with 3 people on it, demanding that I make some statement about the demonstrations and things. I'm not sure that's the appropriate thing to do, but it's appropriate that we react to our constituents, and I want to do that. I think there's a huge difference between a demonstration and a riot. I generally find demonstrations to be a waste of time and not big on changing anybody's mind, but a riot is a whole different ballgame, and I personally believe anyone who attacks anyone else or damages anything that doesn't belong to them should be prosecuted in every single instance that it happens. As far as outrage, I'm utterly enraged by the death of Officer Sicknick. As of yet, the circumstances of his death are not clear, haven't been completely investigated, but whether it was a medical condition or being beat to death, as some outlets have said, doesn't make any difference. Clearly, without the need to combat illegal activity, he would still be alive. So I'm just as enraged about every other police death that's happened for the past 6 or 8 months. These things, it's just the way I am. It's just, I don't see any difference. The groups that have been demanding to defund the police and demilitarize the police yielded the line of Capitol cops in street uniforms. They're supposedly guarding our Capitol down there. This is what, these demonstrations, these things wanted, and that's what they got. To turn around now and demand that the National Guard be here, and yet 2 months ago condemn the use of the National Guard against civilians in other instances is ridiculous. Outrage cannot be mutable. Outrage has got to be for the act, not the circumstances. I am outraged by the attacks on the Capitol. I certainly am. There's a couple hundred people there that really ought to all be in jail, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just as outraged when there were 10,000 people that surged on the Wisconsin Capitol building in Madison and physically occupied it for 2 weeks and did millions of dollars worth of damage. That completely outraged me. And to say, that's what democracy looks like is completely absurd and ridiculous. I was outraged when the mob attacked the Kavanaugh hearings, confirmation hearings, and, stormed into the Supreme Court building. I found that completely outrageous. Our outrage cannot be mutable. Like I said, it must be for the act, not for the circumstances. If your outrage depends on the geography or the politics or the clothes or the genetics of the people involved, then you are the bigot and you are the problem and you are the threat to America. That's the end of that diatribe. I want to talk about the person in Argyle who we lost just recently. Fellow that I'm sure none of you have ever heard of, a guy named Al Plummer. Al's been a friend of mine for probably 50 years or so. As many of you are aware, in the past 10 elections, although not this particular one, I have declared my candidacy for president, and Al has been my campaign manager. Every year, every election, he would come to me and say, I got you 10 votes, you owe me $5 a vote, and I would refuse to pay him, and he would resign in a rage, and then we'd do it again in 4 years. Al was out west working on a long line coyote trapping line, and he rolled his ATV over down a gully and into against a boulder, basically severed his leg. He was trapped between the machine and the boulder by the remains of his leg, which he then severed himself the rest of the way, crawled back to the truck and drove to town. That was the same week that that hiker we all saw on all the national news cut off his arm to escape from Iraq. Trappers aren't treated as kindly as that, so Al never made the press for that, but he was a hard individual. He and I messed with each other over the years fairly extensively. He helped me build my house. I helped him build his house. We did our best to put the screws to each other in dog deals. And I won because a fellow once came in and traded me a nice-looking blue-tick hound, which the guy said was named the Duck because she was afraid of water. And plus she was kind of paddle-footed and walked funny. And Al was quite a blue-tick person, and I traded Al for a motorcycle or some darn thing and gave him the Duck. Probably the Duck was a great dog. She was a terrific coon dog. Beautiful ball mouth and run and tree and just great, wouldn't run any off game as long as there wasn't another dog in sight. Some dogs will fight with other dogs at the tree for possession of of their coon. The dog just hated every other thing canine in the world. You had to keep her, pretty much chained in the barn or she'd kill everything you had on the property. And Al went hunting with me one night. We treated a coon with a duck, did a beautiful job. You had to have her. Like I say, I traded him for something on the spot. He took her home. And the next day, he was driving out to go somewhere to get acquainted with the dog. He had her in the car with him. He drove by the little beach down there in Westlands Falls. And there was a guy down there with one of these dog walking things with 5 or 6 dogs unleashed. Duck bailed right through the window, took out the vent window of his truck, and went over, began to whip all these dogs. And finally, the only way the guy escaped was he wound up backing him out in the Hudson River with all his dogs. And so I won. Al died this last week. He was living in the property owned by Lynn Clower, by the way. So Lynn knew Al pretty well. Lynn is in fact the executive of the state. And I just wanted to say that, as an Argyle resident, I'm going to miss Al. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other supervisors have anything you'd like to offer? I would just like to share on some information about Patricia Ann Hunt, the Washington County Public Health Director, who will be leaving after 35 years of service. Patty started her part-time registered professional nurse career here at Washington County in 1985. In June of 1987, she was appointed full-time to the public health nurse, and in 1994 promoted to Assistant Director of Patient Services. In June of 2008, she was appointed the Public Health Director and has served under this title for the last 12 and a half years. And after 13 years of service, or 35 years of service, Patty will be retiring from Washington County at the end of January. We couldn't have asked for a better individual to be heading up our public health directorate at this time in our history with this pandemic. She's a true professional. She really cares about the citizens of Washington County, and she's demonstrated that in everything that she has ever done. And she's going to be surely missed. I'm sure she'll be around to help out with any consultants or guidance or questions that we may have. But I think the residents of Washington County owe a real gratitude to Patricia Ann Hunt for the service she has provided them over the course of time. And so, if you're listening out there, Patty, thank you very much on behalf of all of us. Is there any other comments to come before us at this point in time from the supervisor's comments?
Cassie.
Cassie, I'm sorry, missed you.
So I have one more other. I'd also like to thank Patty Hunt for all of her service, but I had to put it in there as another because Patty always has others at her meetings.
Anyone else? Okay, so at this point in time, we are going to go into executive session and adjourn from there. Is that the game plan?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to executive session for matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion of a particular individual. I'd like to have just supervisors in here and ask Supervisor Campbell to retire to the administrator's office so that we can fill our obligation moving forward.
Yeah, but don't touch anything.
Very good. We have the motion by Supervisor Hicks. We have a second. Supervisor O'Brien, Supervisor Hankey, Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Fedler, Supervisor Ferguson.
Hey, could we have 1 minute before we start that executive session?
Sure. We'll take a break here, but we got any discussion on that?
Consider the age and gender of the members.
All in favor, say we're saying aye.
Quick break.
Aye.
Opposed?